you ask most Americans, do you believe that an illegal alien who traverses across South America, passes through multiple countries, shows up at our southern border, crosses over, and has a child, if that child should be an American citizen just like anybody else in our country? I think most people would say no. If you ask them, do you believe that a Chinese national who flies into the United States for the sole purpose of having a child, if that child should be an American citizen, most people would say no. And I hope that the Supreme Court recognizes that. You know, for most of American history, we've always recognized that there are certain people who don't fall under that category of citizens. For instance, the children of an invading army, the children of a Native American tribe that maintains tribal relationships. The children of diplomats, for instance, have not been considered American citizens or have not been given American citizenship simply because they're born here. And I think that the same logic applies to the children of illegal aliens who never should have been in our country to begin with.
All right. All right. Of course, that was Representative Brandon Gill. And as you can see, he's laying out the case on why children of illegals should not have birthright citizenship. All right. This is one point of view, one perspective that many of us conservatives agree with. Okay. But there is another side to this, folks. Take a look at this next clip. A Harvard law professor is making the case for birthright citizenship. All right. This is clip 9.
Present in birthright citizenship. What is birthright citizenship anyway? Hi, I'm Kenneth Mack. I'm the Lawrence D. Beall Professor of Law and Affiliate Professor of History at Harvard University. Well, birthright citizenship is a principle that anyone who's born within the territorial bounds of the United States is a citizen upon birth. So in the early years of the United States, people came here, people left. There were a lot of people called sojourners. They would come for work and then they might go back to France or England or Germany. But if there were children born here, those children were citizens of the United States back to the founding, with a few exceptions. Diplomats, for instance, France sends its minister to the United States. The minister has children. Those children are citizens of France. There was a lot of debate about whether Native Americans were American citizens, and there was a lot of debate about free African Americans, not those who were enslaved, but free African Americans had the same rights as white people.
All right, that is not the right clip. But that's all right. Ladies, what are your thoughts here? I'll start off with you, Nicole. What do you think how do you think the court is going to go on this?
I think it's going to break along ideological lines. And this is the reason why I say that. Last week on Thursday, there was a tiff. It was probably the biggest tiff in SCOTUS recent memory. And I know most people didn't even pay attention to it. But Justice Sotomayor took the liberty to read from her 35-page dissent about TPS. Now, that's not unheard of. Sometimes they get a bee in their bonnet and they just start reading their dissent so people feel their emotion. But she got a little spicy with it. I mean, she put a little stink on the back of it. And then Alito, generally, after someone reads their dissent, it's just quiet and they move on to the next thing. He took it upon himself to remind her that this is not new law. Temporary means temporary. And DHS has always had that power. This is about the separation of the three arms of government here in the United States. It has nothing to do with Trump himself. This is everything about how power works. She gave him a dirty look. He kind of gave her a toss over his head. And SCOTUS rules, that's a damn knockout, drag out. Somebody got their wig pulled the way that they act, the decorum that happens in that place. I think that wasn't an argument about the temporary protective status. I think that was about a bigger argument because although they're reading the rulings, they've already had the argument. They've already talked to one another, and everybody has cast their vote of what they're going to say. 5 for people who agree, 4 for people who dissent. However that's going to work. They've already had those arguments. And I think Sotomayor tipped her hand a little bit. I think she tipped her hand, and I think it's going to be her, Kagan, and Brown Jackson who are going to be dissenting. And I think the more conservative justices are going to lean into, this was the rule in the early 1800s when we needed more population, when we needed to figure out what we were going to do with these people that were enslaved, this great sin that stained our nation. How do we make this right? I don't think that they see that carrying over, especially when you talk about the people who are subject to the United States. Because if you hold a foreign passport, you're not a citizen. You're a citizen of that nation that you hold that passport for. So if you come here from Guatemala and you got a Guatemala passport and you live in the United States, it does not make you an American. You are Guatemalan, right? That's what the passport says. You are a citizen. When you open it up, a citizen of Guatemala. So being here does not necessarily make you a citizen of the United States. Now, being born here to two people who are illegal, that's a whole horse of a different color. But if you were staying a diplomat, two diplomats get together, have a child, it's not an American, it's whatever nation they hold passports for. And I think that's going to be a very heartbreaking decision for a lot of people.
Well, the core of the debate is the citizenship clause of the 14th Amendment. So it was ratified in 1868. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. All right. So we know this overturned the Dred Scott decision, which denied citizenship to Black Americans. All right. So this is the key. The 14th Amendment is the key to all of this. Shelley, what do you think is going to happen? Do you think this is going to be overturned? What do you think?
I'm going to say a 5-4 decision. And I think one of the primary person that I'm concerned about who can swing it either way is going to be Roberts. Roberts is sort of what I guess I call him, that maybe others have too. I call him sort of this maverick of the Supreme Court. He's more focused on the image of the court, more so than the other justices are. He's focused on the image and how the court has historically been viewed and the things that they have historically stood on. So I'm just a little concerned. I know some of the pundits or the political talking heads are saying it's probably not going to go in our favor or what we want. That's what they're saying. But of course, they've been wrong before too. So I'm trying to just stay. But that's what I think. I think it's going to be a 5-4 decision. But I'm mostly concerned about Roberts.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think it's going to pass either. And I think it's not going to pass based off of the same reason I said before. Okay, so this is being brought up because of Trump's executive order. The executive order sought to reinterpret or limit citizenship for children born to parents without permanent legal immigration status. So it triggered a nationwide class action litigation, and the Supreme Court are hearing arguments in regards to this. Okay. But I think they're going to push it back to Congress and say, look, y'all, you need to either do a constitutional amendment or change the law. I think they're going to push it back to that. I don't think they're going to want to wade into this because it's based off of an executive order. And once again, they are not here to make law. They are not here to change law. They're here to interpret the law that is here. And so I believe that, and again, I agree with the conservative justices and what you all said. I don't agree with this birthright citizenship, but I think that they're going to punt it back to Congress to do what they're supposed to do. Legislature, I should say.
Now, I don't, here's what we know for sure. Congress ain't going to touch it. Because everybody likes staying in their seat, right? Yeah. Everybody likes the perks and all the things that come with. But I think this is a very interesting legal question. And taking a look at how they've ruled on all of the immigration rules thus far, right? Because nobody in a million years thought that they would make temporary mean temporary. People are saying, no, temporary means temporary. It does not mean forever. And it doesn't mean safe to an American standard. Haiti, God bless that nation, is never going to be safe to an American standard. It's never going to be America. maybe in a millennia, possibly, but it's never going to be America. When I say that there are other nations, Syria being another one, we have sent other protected people home. When temporary is over, you have to go. And I think that was the crux of the argument. It wasn't necessarily about immigration. It was about narrowly interpreting the law. For this birthright citizenship, it's not so much the entire amendment, it's the part that says subject to the jurisdiction thereof.
And that's the part is actually, I do think that I agree with you, KJ, the Congress needs to have passed this this long time ago. But I do think this is the auspices of the Supreme Court, just that phrase, because it's in the Constitution. It's in the original, subject to the jurisdiction thereof. So I think the Supreme Court does have the wherewithal, if you will, the right, maybe the responsibility to make a ruling on that constitutional original phrase and meaning. So I think that may be the part that may go 50-50. I understand what you're saying. Congress is derelict, if you will, lazy. But I do think that that particular phrase does give the Supreme Court the right to make a decision without making law.
Right. So that's the thing. It would not be, a complete reimagining, as Democrats like to say, but it would be clarification of what that means, because the lawsuit isn't because Trump said, if you're born to foreign parents, it's that particular section, subject to the jurisdiction thereof. What does that mean? And the Supreme Court can interpret what that means by today's standards, not what it meant back then, but what it means now. If you're born to two people who hold foreign passports, they are not subject to the jurisdiction thereof. They are not Americans. They are not subject to our laws. They are not subject to our rules. But here's this baby born on our soil. Does that make that baby subject to our rules? Now, if that's the case, and if they do say that, diplomats are in for a world of trouble.
Yeah, well, that's the thing where he said all persons born in the United States. That's what that's sweeping. And then, and like you mentioned, they need to interpret it because the subject to the jurisdiction thereof, some are saying simply means subject to the U.S. law and authority while physically present here. Then we have the precedent. I mean, you had the Wong Kim Ark case, which that established strong ties here. The lower courts and decades of practice applied citizenship to children of undocumented parents. Okay, so it sort of overturned or narrowed what we settled expectations for millions.
Right.
So
that's where that's where our Congress has been again derelict over decades with this immigration. This is how the immigration ties in, of course, where Congress again, both administrations over decades have allowed our borders to be so porous and come and go, have as many children here, go where this is where the law and the legislature, the Congress is supposed to come in. But again, the Supreme Court, I think I don't know if they're going to, but I think they do have the auspices to interpret that phrase.
All right. Well, folks, sound off in the chat. Let us know what you think is going to happen tomorrow. This is going to be a landmark decision. There's going to be uproars on both sides. This could change. This would change everything here in the United States.
Yes.
Either way, no matter what they decide, the nation has changed forever. And again, this is where we go back to that preacher who preaches to maybe 1,000 people a Sunday. The world is waiting with bated breath on Clarence Thomas and these other justices making this decision with bated breath. And thank God it hasn't leaked. Thank God, like Dobbs, it has not leaked. But whatever the decision is, as a citizen of this great nation, I know that there has to be more value to my citizenship than two foreign-born people coming here and having a baby. One of the things that DHS has already done is all of these anchor baby businesses, literally businesses that have what they call anchor baby tourism, where you're 8 months pregnant, you fly in just to have a quote-unquote American baby, and they don't just claim American citizenship, they claim dual citizenship. So whatever nation their parents are from, plus the United States, and then they fly back home. So if home gets ticky-tacky, the kid comes to the United States, he's a citizen. So you know what that means? We call this chain migration. Now he's here. He's a minor. Where's his parents? He's going to need some parents. When the parents come, you might as well bring the grandparents. The grandparents, you can bring the nephews, nieces, aunts, and cousins. And before you know it, you live in Dearborn. You live in Dearborn.
Oh,
Yeah. Wow.